Okay, welcome everyone to the gathering. We're talking today with Ronne Rock. I just love her name. I mean, it just sounds like she should be, some sort of heroine in a comic book strip series. I don't know.
Oh,
Do you
that's
like that?
new. I get a
Yeah.
lot of you should be on radio or you should be an
Yeah,
actor or like a rock star. Oh my gosh, I do like that.
it's so great. Like if you could pick a name, like I might pick Ronnie Rock. That's just such an awesome name for such an awesome woman, full
Wow.
of so much wisdom and style and grace. And I'm super grateful for her sharing her gifts and her wisdom with us today. So thank you, Ronnie, for being here and being a part of the Writer's Block. We're so grateful to have you here. So today we're just going to be talking about holy and whole writing rhythms. And just wanted to give you an opportunity before we dive too deep into your topic today, just to tell us a little bit about yourself and about your writing journey.
Sure. Let's see. I am Ronnie Rock. I was not born with the last name Rock, but gosh, when I met Brad, it just seemed like a perfect thing to take on. So
Yes.
I'm honored and honored to be a part of his family as well. It's an incredible family. And I am, oh gosh, woman, friend, sister. I'm an orphan. Both my parents passed away, so I am orphaned. Um, I am a wife and a mom and a Gigi and a trusted lap to a very, very opinionated rescue dog named Pearl.
Yeah.
And I live in just outside of Austin, Texas, in the Texas Hill Country near a lake where even as I just finished writing a story that's going to be in a compilation, and I wrote about the importance of golden hour, and not just golden hour in photography, but even I translate that to golden hours in our lives and stuff. But I talk about that lake being so important. Important to me. It has become part of a rhythm and a resting place. And so, but I am a vocational writer, actually, not a lot of long form, but I have a journalism major and thought when I originally went to college that I was going to be an investigative reporter. I thought one day I'd be on like 60 Minutes. I wanted to do those deep dive investigative stories until I realized that I didn't like news writing. That was a big thing when you're in journalism school and you realize that just the simplicity of who, what, when, where, why, and how, that was just it just felt very elementary to me. And so everybody kept saying, oh, you should be a feature writer, because I enjoy a lot more color to a story. And but that led to me going into marketing. And so that is a bent vocationally that I found that really works for me. I am a storyteller. It's in my blood. And so to be able to vocationally, I write a lot of content, both long form and short form, with a goal of helping to transform a story or another story, or to help you in enter into a story of care. And I have done that. I did that in the marketplace in television. I worked for a major airline, worked for a major entertainer, and then I got in entertainment company, and then got into the nonprofit world where I have been now for a good chunk of time. And so what I love really about what I get to do now is that the stories that I write, many of them inspired then the stories that were actually in my book, One Woman Can Change the World. They are stories of hope. And they are, and hope is a unique thing to market, to encourage someone. Faith is a very unique thing to market. It was much easier to market video rentals and Coca-Cola. But it's an honor to me to be in a faith writing space, and to be able to encourage without manipulation, to tell a story without exploitation, but to invite people into a story of hope and to see where they can be an active participant in that story of life transformation or whatever it might be. So that's what I do vocationally. And then I also have had the honor of getting to publish some books, and there are 3 that are self-published. They are prayer journals slash devotionals that you can find upon the interwebs. And then published One Woman Can Change the World. That was published in the thick of pandemical, political, and culturally difficult times right in the middle of 2020. And so,
Well, that makes sense too, because your comments about hope being easier to sell. Um, it is such an important emotion that we tap into in our writing, and
mhm,
learning from other people's stories of hope lends itself to hope in our own, right? We
mhm,
can see ourselves, and that's the beauty and the power of storytelling, is that we put ourselves into those places that we're not physically in. And so that's writing is so powerful in that, and that it transforms the reader,
mhm.
and offers hope in that.
That's
um, so when you say that you write vocationally, you're writing in some ministry aspect form of writing. Is that your job, to be a content writer for a ministry? Can you?
I started as a content writer for
Okay.
ministry, managing social media, blog posts, interviews, all kinds of things. I now am over marketing for an organization called Orphan Outreach. And so we do all of the marketing and communication for that, for the organization, also manage all of our special events, which is, it is writing and communicating in a different way. Um, Writing is just, there are so many, I'm writing scripts that have to be done on a stage. I am working on scripts that will then be produced into a video format. I write annual reports. I write social media content, blog post, website, a lot of things. I know, as when we think about writers, we think naturally about some sort of long form content, right? It's a chapter of a book, or it's a book, or it's a Bible study, and those things. But there are so many other ways that we can use that gift of expression to be able to share story and to be able to participate with others. It might be that these stories are not my personal stories, but they are stories where my signature as a faith writer gets to be involved. And I
Mhm.
still can use the Stephanie Duncan Smith shared, gosh, she shared this years and years ago at a conference about the unique mantle that a faith writer wears. And she talked about in the if you look at the temples, um, in the Old Testament, if you look at those temples physically, there is a front entrance and then there's a back entrance, right, to the temple. And the priest would go into the temple, into the presence of God, but then would exit out the backside. They would never come back out the front, because they wanted to make sure that everybody understood that entering in, that there would be some sort of transformation that would happen, and you would never exit the same way you walked in. And
Mm.
how that unique calling that we have as people of faith, when we write, whether we are writing personally, whether we are writing a journal post, whether we are writing anything, especially those of us when we choose to put our words out into the world in any way, have that unique opportunity that we get to be the priesthood, right? And so our hope is that someone would enter into that space of our words, no matter where our words live, but they would come back, they would leave changed in some way. And
I
that
love that. That's a
that,
great picture.
isn't it? I think about that constantly, again, as I'm writing my own words that I might put out into the world, but also as I'm writing the words as the voice of Orphan Outreach. And it's what I share with my team of, remember, you have this unique opportunity to walk somebody into this space where God is touching and working and moving. And that person is going to be changed because of that brush with God, that they are going to be changed.
That's so beautiful. And I love all of the different ways in which you said your writing takes shape and takes form. I mean, there's so much versatility in writing, and in all of those different touch points, whether you're engaging with somebody in your website copy, or you're sending a personal email, or you're posting, or you're even writing a sales report, right? Like the whole gamut of things that we might consider something that is transformational. But your words have the ability to move people in a progression, just like that temple illustration. Like, we want to take them from one place and move them to a new place. They're in some sort of transition, and that in all of those different avenues and all those different formats of writing, that you as the writer can be a part of that catalyst of change for people.
Yeah.
That's such
And
a
it was
privilege.
a sweet friend that stopped me in my tracks one day and said, "You do write every day?" Because I would say, haven't had time to write. It's been a dry season. I haven't had time to write. And she'd say, what are you talking about? You write every day. And I said, no, you don't understand. I mean, I do think, but I'm not writing. And she goes, do you journal? I said, yeah. She goes, that's writing. And I said, okay, fine, but. And she goes, there's no but. That's writing. And then she go, and uh, did you just produce a video? Well, yeah, but that's it. She goes, no, stop discounting the fact that you are a writer. Let that understanding seep into all of the different places where you use that beautiful creative expression, and you put it somewhere.
Mhm.
But stop discounting and saying, oh, it's only qualified writing if it's published and it goes out into the world. It's only really qualified writing if it's in a book. It's only really qualified writing if it is read by somebody that has the potential to share it or platform it or whatever. And those words that are in my journal, that's not qualified writing. It's like, no, that's writing between me and the Lord.
Yeah.
Who qualifies?
And
Yeah.
who can ever say that that's not transformational, right? Like, I was just thinking about that today, of all of the guts and tears spilled out into your journal, and who gets changed in that process? We do,
Mhm.
because we're encountering God and his word. We're dealing with our own junk that we're going through, but
Mhm.
like, such transformation takes place
And
there.
that's, I know one of the things that we'll talk about on Friday, because it's interesting. I'm like consolidating a whole lot of stuff into 1 hour on Friday. It's gonna be whoop. But I mean, I have now even a personal rhythm of writing where I have learned to honor those words that nobody else will see, and then allow, from those places where nobody sees, allow them to feed into the things that I then want to take and make public in some way.
Mm.
But instead of, again, it's like, oh, I've got my private stuff over here and then my public stuff is over here. I've become much more um, honoring of what is shared, that a high likelihood that nobody will, you know what, you may see 5% of this, but this I hold and honor, and then allow it to fuel what I might share publicly.
No, that's beautiful. I love that. So you've shared a couple times that you've been traditionally published, and
Mhm.
for many writers that is the dream, that's the standard, right? But tell us about that experience for you. What was that like? How did how did that help you? Or maybe what was the transformation that took place for you in that process?
Oh gosh. And I could talk for
That's a
hours
big question, maybe.
about the traditional publishing process and the things that you need to know, because I do mentor folks and coach folks that think they want to be traditionally published. I coach and I don't have like big sessions. It's just like one-to-one. Let's talk about your book proposal. Let's talk about what they're going to want to see. Let's talk about what you want to say. Are you absolute? And I'll ask every time, are you absolutely sure you want this to be a book? Are you absolutely sure you want to walk this road? Um, I I had an idea for a story. I was in a writer's group, learned a lot about personal expression of writing because there were things I thought, oh, I would never put that out into the world or whatever. But I learned a lot, and just it was a small group of women, much like this, where we just sat and we would do fuse sessions on a Saturday. It'd be open writing. Everybody just kind of get together and stare at each other and write. And so it was very primitive, but it was wonderful. And through that, I gained the moxie, I guess, because gosh, to even think that you want to write a book or to think that you've got enough stuff in there. Do I have 50,000 of anything in me? And
Yeah.
that was one of the big questions I asked. Like, I have a lot of like 500 word things in me, but I don't know if I have 50,000 of anything in me. And so I decided, like, you know what? I do think I want to write a book. And I had this idea it started as like, oh, I'm a marketer. I know exactly what I'll do. I'll do a book. It'll be about a bunch of stories. I'll be your tour guide. And then I'll use it to raise money for something, because that was easier for me to justify than I personally have something to share that I think might have heft in depth. And so I went about it in probably the most roundabout way. It's like, oh, I think I'm going to write a book. I'll just self-publish this book. In the midst of that, a friend and I ended up publishing 3 Bible studies, all self-published, and I can walk through that process as well, with anybody, of the good, the bad, the whatever, but all done through the Kindle platform on Amazon. And it was not a horrible, not a painful thing. We used them to actually fundraise, and we were able to raise money. We were able to take a woman with us to Guatemala who has a ministry in the US. We paired her with a woman who has a ministry in Guatemala. It was wonderful. But then was challenged to think about traditionally publishing. So I finally, again, gathered the enough, whatever it is
Moxie.
within you, it's moxie, because it's not all just like
Courage.
you're like,
Yeah.
it's just gut. And so I was introduced to an agent initially to just ask her thoughts about the concept of the book. I was not asking for her to agent me or to sign me. And so I sat with her and she said, I think your concept is really great. I would love to see it when you flesh it out a little bit more. And I took her up on the offer. It took forever for me to write a book proposal. I was terrified. I used the Michael Hyatt thing, and then I give it a huge thumbs down. I know Michael Hyatt, everybody loved his book proposal thing. And I'm like, I used Mary DeMuth's, which worked for me. It worked for me technically. It also worked for me just from a heart standpoint, the way her book proposal course is laid out. And so I wrote my book proposal. It was called Building Eden. My book was not called One Woman Can Change the World. It was Building Eden. It was all about this double entendre of women moving back to that place where in relationship with God, we're walking in the cool of the afternoon, and that intimate, beautiful, the way we were designed. And then there was the other piece of school in Eden, Jamaica, where I had met an incredible woman who was one of the women, and the woman who the book is dedicated to. Sent my little feeble book proposal to the woman who was kind enough to give me some advice, and I was signed by that agency, which I kept saying the whole process. I'm like, I'm going to do this, and they're going to say it stinks, and I won't get signed. Oh, I'm going to do this. Nobody else is going to want the book. So much self-confidence. Gosh, pat myself on the back. She signed, and then we worked. She signed me in February. I actually physically met her in April of that year, so we could get our picture taken together. But that whole process from April to July, this was of 2018, we worked on my book proposal. And I loved it that that was her big thing of like, I know exactly what makes a proposal that everybody is going to love. So we worked and finessed that book proposal. And then in July, she said, I'm going to start sending it out. It's finally perfect. I'm going to start sending it out. Give me your wish list of publishers that you think might match your personality. I've got my list of publishers, but I'm going to start sending it out. And I want you to be prepared that you're going to get a lot of rejection before we get to the yes. And I said, okay, great. I am so ready for rejection because I had already told myself
Sign me
I was
up.
going to be rejected. I'm so ready for rejection. I was not ready for somebody to say yes. And in a very highly, highly, highly unusual turn of events, she sent the proposal out at like 1 o'clock on a Tuesday in July and got within an hour and a half a response from an acquisitions editor at Revell saying, I love this idea. I want to go ahead and take it to the acquisitions board. Revell or Baker Publishing has a two-step process. There's the acquisitions panel. We think this is a good story. And then the pub board, which is sales and marketing, of we think this is a good story to read. And then theirs is we think that people will buy it. And so they had a two-step process. That process was very fast. And I had an offer within about 2.5 weeks. So highly unusual, not the norm. Don't know why, outside of God just being ever so kind, that happened. And so signed with Revell and walked that process. One of the things that I talk a lot, and we'll talk about on Friday, is what happens when your book no longer becomes yours and your words are contracted to someone else, and when a book becomes business. Because some folks can make that transition very easily. It can be a really difficult thing from a heart standpoint when your book becomes a business transaction. And then all of a sudden there are timelines and there are deadlines. And so you moving from the I write when I want and I have this freedom and this liberty to know I have to write on deadline to get to, I have a contracted number of pages. I have a contracted number of chapters. I have a contracted timeline. And then you are handing it to someone else who is then dissecting it to make sure you are staying on point, on target. And then someone else who is dissecting it technically can be a big challenge. And that was, for me, it was a huge learning curve because I also don't write chronologically. And so I had to build rhythms to actually give myself permission to write the book the way I needed to write the book. That
Yeah, I was just
chapter
thinking,
one and getting to the epilogue was not a way that felt like a natural progression for me personally. And I had to give myself permission because I would look at the Jenny Allens of the world. They're like, I'm going to go lock myself in a hotel room this weekend and write a book. I'm like, that.
yeah, I don't know how they do that, but I see that online as well. And I think as you're talking this through with us, it's making more and more sense, the title of your teaching sessions with us today about holy and whole writing rhythms, because there is a point, I mean, even if you're not necessarily coming up against deadlines for a publisher, which I would imagine would be the most stressful thing as a writer that to experience. I've not experienced that personally, but I put limits on myself all the time where I'm like, oh, like I'm feeling it today. I haven't put a post out in a few weeks and that is weighing on me. And I feel this pressure to produce and to create really soulful, heartfelt, genuine, biblical words, you know, and that is a pressure that I think a lot of writers probably feel, that like we just constantly have to be putting out that content and constantly have to be producing. And that that's a real struggle. I think that's a real hard thing to do. So how, without giving too much away for Friday, because I know you're going to talk about this more in depth, but, and you've mentioned the lake near your house and things like that. What are some of the ways that you kind of help yourself with those pressures? I don't want to, again, I don't want you to give away too much, but like, are there some things that we can do as writers that will help us in those places of like, oh, I've got to produce, and yet you really want that soul work to be taking place so that it's a genuine expression of your own heart.
And this one, I'm going to talk about it on Friday, but can talk about it here as well. I mean, one way is to, I think one of the best gifts that we can give ourselves as writers, one of the best gifts that we can give ourselves as real life human beings, right? Flesh and bone, personality, emotion, and everything, is grace. It is the fact that there will never be enough of anything to satisfy that will satisfy the masses, that will satisfy an industry, that will satisfy whatever the cultural trends are, that will satisfy the algorithms. There's nothing that you can do that will actually fully satisfy that. There are people making bajillion dollars to try to teach you that you can somehow conquer it all. And the thing is that you can't. That is just, it's human nature just overall. And the nature of this world overall is that it's designed to never be fully satisfied, right? It will always be left wanting. And so I think the best gift that you can ever give yourself is the grace to step back, the grace to pace yourself at a pace that feels right for the way you are crafted and designed. We get in way too much trouble when we compare, because then that leads us to one of two roads. If we start comparing to what someone else is doing, or comparing to the style of writing, it doesn't even have to be how often somebody posts, but it could be the style of writing that they do, or the platform that they have, or any of those things. It's going to lead to one of two things. We're either going to get hyper competitive because we feel like I have to get over that, right? They become the standard and I'm going to jump the standard, or we fall into self-condemnation. Neither one of those two things are godly. Neither one of those two things are good for us. They're not loving toward us. We are not treating this image and likeness with kindness with either one of those two things. And so giving ourselves grace is a very important thing. Things that I have personally learned to do is, again, I start with, and Melissa, you shared it in the chat about the iceberg theory. I have realized that what is really important is what am I doing that nobody sees? Where am I spending that time? And I give permission for incomplete sentences to live in my journal. I give permission for words that are not fully crafted. I write them all down. I give space. I give space for myself to have a really great writing day, and I give space for myself to have a day where writing might just be a single word or a single thought. And then I highly recommend that it is okay for you to step away. In fact, it feels weird for me to be talking about writing soulfully and telling you about my writing journey, when right now, if you go to social media, you'll see that I am in the midst of a break. And I am doing that specifically because I teach about soulfulness, and I teach about safeguarding, not because because I slay the day at it. I do it because Emily P. Freeman, she's one of the few podcasts I listen to regularly. And this morning I listened, and she was talking to somebody about self-care. And the woman said, it's not because I know how to do it all the time, or I'm expert at doing it all the time. It's because I am faithfully, imperfectly, perfectly practicing it. And I'm like, that is me with soul care. I at least ask myself the question now, like, is writing, and this is when it comes to putting words out into the world, is it feeling burdensome right now? Do I feel that I am producing right now, instead of it coming from it feeling like and there are times that finding the right word is a struggle. I'm not going to say that it's all just like, oh, it has to come out like effervescent. It's beautiful. It just bubbles onto the page. But there are times that you go, no, this isn't about me just working through something. I'm now weary. I feel tired at the thought of putting words publicly into the page. And so I'm pushing them out and I am producing. I'm now moving from writing and crafting to merely producing. And so, right. And so as soon as I started feeling that now, I'm like, it's
That
time.
might be a clue, a
Yeah.
cue to
Yeah.
step back.
When I
You know,
stop liking something I love, when I stop liking the act of something that I naturally love, it is now I have, because I practiced it enough to go, I'm feeling
yeah,
that thing,
like this is forced. It's not authentic.
feeling forced right now. I feel that anything I put out, it's not that it would be bad or anything. It's just, I need space. And so, um, to me, I give myself space. Now, I have a lot of global friends online. And so this last time, if you were to look at my last week of posts, it will say, guys, I'm stepping away. And I did an entire week's worth of just a reminder, I'm stepping away. I love you. If you need any prayers, message me directly. I still have that on. So through it all, I was still telling people I'm not gone. I'm still here. If you actually legitimately need me, I'm still here. And so, and I've had folks that have taken me up on it. Like, know that you're on sabbatical right now. Would you please pray? Or things. So it's,
It's
and
so good to know that about yourself and to honor that place and to do the hard things sometimes, which in this case, I mean, it is hard for us to step away from social media as writers too. We're trying to build trust with our readers to be like, adios, I'm out. But like, I think that that's such a good test of your faithfulness. If you feel like the Lord is telling you, hey, I need to spend more time with you, or there's something out of whack. We know that feeling in our own hearts when we're pushing through something that we need to stop and just really reassess where things are
or
at. I
others,
know that that's so good and so healthy, and I'll
and
be
it can be
interested to
terrifying.
know
It
how
can
that
be
works out for you.
terrifying. It can just be terrifying because, especially if you're like, I want to put my words out into the world, or I just put my words out into the world, or whatever. And the pressure to continue, like, oh, you know what? If I stop putting something out there, then the algorithm is going to figure it out, and then I'm not going to show up, and then all my numbers are going to go down, and then you go, okay, wait, whoa, what am I thinking about right now?
Yeah.
I'm
Where's my where do I find my identity,
Mhm.
right?
And my identity is not in numbers. My identity is solidly and squarely in the fact that I am delightfully created by Father God, who calls me the apple of his eye and absolutely wants to spend time with me. And so the best way I can honor even my writing is by, you know what? I'm going to lay that down for a while. And so we'll talk about those things on Friday. We'll talk about the ways that you can lay the pen down and nobody even know it. We'll talk about, because there are tricks and tips and hacks where you can personally lay a pen down for a season and not have anybody even know out there what you're doing inside. And you don't always have to lay the pen down entirely. There are other things that you can do. There are things that you can do that are refreshing to your soul. Some creative practices and creative rhythms that you can do that just like spark some new feelings of creativity and refreshment.
I'm
And
so
so,
excited to learn about that. I think, yeah, what I'm hearing you say, and I'm excited to hear more on Friday, is that sometimes to be soulful and tend our own souls well requires some intentionality on our part versus being a passive receiver all the time. and I'm not saying that we don't always receive from the Lord. We absolutely do, but that we can plan ahead, that we can make some provisions for our own work in a way that will give us that time to step back and be recipients of grace, of time, of rest. And that, it's so interesting, the patterns God has established in his word. 6 days he worked, on the seventh day he rested.
Mhm.
To think that we can just push through and not pay attention to that need for rest and soul care is folly on our part. We really need to do that.
So true. So true. There's a pastor a long time ago used this term, and we laugh about it because it feels like a marketing term, but it is, to me, it is a part of soul care as well. And the term is that we are creative creations created by a creative creator.
Ooh, that's good.
And so I love that statement because it also reminds me that part of soul care, it's not, it doesn't have to be me stopping down or whatever, but I'm created. And part of that is the Lord's imagination is a part of his presence within me is imaginative and it's expansive. And so one of the ways that I can tend to my soul is through the act of creativity. And it may not have anything to do with writing. It may be finding another creative space where I can just play a little bit, give my mind and heart rest through play or through, if it is writing, changing up the way I write in a way that just allows sparks of creativity. Because I think sometimes we're like, I'm a very creative person. And then we put ourselves in a tiny box of what that creativity must look like
Mm.
in order to be validated, right? A lot of us, I mean, we learn so much. You got to find your reader, which is super important. Amy talks about that. Amy Simon's like, how do you find your reader and how do you find those rhythms? And Melissa talks about how do you stay consistent and stuff. Those are all important unless they become prisons to us. And I think sometimes we self-impose pages around our own creativity because we're like, oh, well, if that's my reader, then I could never write to anybody else, or I could never this is only the way I always do it, right? This is the way I have to write in order to be accepted. And we're like, nobody is telling you that. Nobody is telling you that.
Yeah, that's so
Right.
good.
Yeah.
That's so good. Yeah, we
And
can box ourselves
right in
in.
the chat, she's like, those things serve us, right? They help put some framework. They should never, though, cage us in. And so sometimes soul care is giving yourself permission to, maybe it's as simple as giving yourself permission to write to that reader in a different way.
I don't know
Instead
if
of writing to that reader, inviting that reader to write back to you. Sometimes it's such a simple thing that can just, again, it's just like fresh breath in your lungs.
Amber shared an article in the blog yesterday, and it was about this very thing. I encourage you to look it up if you haven't read it earlier, but it was all about that, about how so often we serve the numbers, we serve our analytics, we serve the response versus doing these things because we love to do it and that it's an overflow of our heart. And some of you have been mentioning that in the comments, which is so good. But check out that blog post if you didn't check it out earlier. She posted it yesterday and I was really encouraged by that. So you've given us so many great things to think about, and we're excited to hear more from you on Friday. But I just want to invite you, if you're on the call with us now, to, if you have any comments or thoughts that you'd like to ask Ronnie, she can look through some of the chat if she's missed some of it. But what are some of your takeaways today? Maybe how you're assessing your own writing rhythms and how good are you at stepping away or taking care of your soul, even maybe not necessarily taking a hiatus, but those incremental steps. How do you guys feel you are doing at that? We'd love to hear from you or any other comments you have.
Oh, I'm just enjoying it, Ronnie. I was thinking about how there were a number of things where you said where I'm like, I want to go back and listen to this again and write down these quotes because and I think it's kind of fun that people are talking about writing from the overflow, since that's like the title of my um next week. Like it's beautiful, like the whole theme of it, and just thinking about how much it encompasses the heart of this whole group, um, of like why we're all here, where we want to be. Um, we want to be receptacles of grace and givers of grace, and let our own souls be tended in sweet communion with God, instead of um, trying to be producers, you know? Sorry, I just realized that my rocking porch swing, like sometimes I have to shut off the video just because I end up, I think I would be a distraction with my rocking. Sorry, guys. Okay, I'm done.
I love how that works out too, Space, just the way one week kind of lends itself into the next. So we're excited to hear from you next week.
I have a feeling that there are two women behind that are planning wonderful things and putting in a lot of labor to make this group exist, and that you guys are doing that very intentionally. So good job, Kara and Amy. Proud of you guys. You guys are rock stars.
Thanks, Space. Any other comments from you all, just how you're, or maybe even some questions that you hope that Ronnie might address on Friday would be good too.
Yeah, we'll be on vacation Friday, so I won't be able to, I'll have to watch the replay, but I guess my question would be, how do you know, if you're changing like a season of life, how do you manage like really figuring out how to create that new rhythm, you know? And like for me, some of it for me is, am I going to write more in the Christian sphere than the secular sphere, or things like that? But I kind of sometimes it's like, do you know, the the publishing world talks about rebranding yourself, but really I think some of that really is rooted in those different rhythms that you're in the different phases of life. So
A really good point.
Yeah, and this is something I'll talk about. I'll get to touch on Friday, that your that thing that is within you, right? That personal manifesto, your slant, your perspective. It's not just about the topic, it is your view of that topic and your perspective. And I think oftentimes it's easy for us to look at a phase of life or a stage of life and say, oh, I'm a mom of littles, so I'm going to write it to moms of littles. And you go, but yeah, those littles grow up, and then what are you going to do? And so what you have to do is look higher than that, of like, what is the theme? Okay, are you if you say I'm a tips and hacks girl, why? What is the why of why you write? And because that can move over seasons, that can move over transitions in life. That greater theme of why do I want to write in the first place? If I write fiction and nonfiction, there's still a theme there, because it's your perspective, your slant, right? It is the way the light shines in on those things, the way your eyes see that light. And so look for that theme, and I think that can carry you. I also am absolutely a believer that God is the God of the ampersand. It is not the, oh, I used to work here and I wrote or I used to live in this city and I wrote from this perspective, and now I've moved to a different city, and he nullifies everything that came before. He is an ampersand God. And I write about this in my book, that the thing that I love about that symbol, the ampersand, is that if you look at it, it's different than an and, really. It means and also this, right? It is like it is complete on its own and connected. So if Kara and I were going to start a company called Rock and Ray, or Ray and Rock, and I used an ampersand, then you would know that Kara fully is in that story and I'm fully in that story. And that ampersand is pulling us together, because that ampersand is like, and in itself, and it is like complete. And I look at God, if you look back at your life, even if you have a real solid memory of what life was like before you acknowledged the Lord, or you acknowledged and embraced the love of Christ, he doesn't wash all that away and say none of that life mattered anymore. You still, it's beautiful because he was there, right? And that personality, and you as the image and likeness of him, that slant was there. And he is not going to again say, I know that you talked about this, now you get rid of it because now you got a new thing. You were single, now you're married, so you'll never, ever, never talk about being single again. It's like, no, I'm still a whole human as a single person. And now I'm a married person. Then I might be a parental person, or I might not be a parental person, or I might never get married or whatever. But I love that God's stories, he links them together to say that what you were doing still holds value in what you are doing. There are lessons that you will carry with you. There are perspectives that you're going to carry with you. There's this whole story that is still there, that still holds value. And so I look at those two things. I look at higher themes. What is the why? What resonates with me? Right? That I can't not write about these themes, even if I'm writing about the basics. And then what is it that God wants me to remember as I'm moving on, that I get to carry with me into this new season, into this new place? Because you'll find that your story will actually get richer. The depth of wisdom and insight gets richer as you go. I could talk all day long also about what it means to grow old, because it's discounted in our world, but or discounted in our country, but not around the world. And there's such beautiful perspective that comes in walking some road and having some dirt on your feet, that you will be able to bring into a new situation, that others that just happen to be there when you get there, they're waiting to hear the perspective and unique insight that you're going to bring, that somebody who hasn't walked your road isn't going to bring.
It's such a great question, Kathy. I know Carrie was kind of mentioning she's in a similar thing, right? With her mom and dealing with a lot of upheaval in your life, and all of those seasonal things that come and life transitions. So I think that's really wise, Ronnie, just to step back a little bit, look at what overarching themes are running through your life and the grace of God there. But thank you for your question.
Mm-hmm.
That also makes me think sometimes too, maybe my why isn't big enough. You know, like what I think is the why might be too small.
Oh, that could be a whole nother other. We could be
Talk about that.
You know what? We're all going to be pondering that now. So thank you, Kathy.
Sorry.
Yeah, those whys are important, aren't they?
Very true.
Yeah. Well, we are reaching that hour mark. Thank you, Ronnie, so much for being here with us and sharing this wisdom. And we're looking forward to seeing all of you on Friday. I'll have the replay up if you missed this today, and I hope that you'll be blessed by it and Ronnie's wisdom. We're thankful just for the way the Lord uses all of you women in different ways with different skill sets to bless our community. I'm really grateful for you.
Me too.
All right.
Okay.
Well, thank you all. You all have a blessed day.
Thank you.